Hi, this is Gary with MacMost.com. Today I want to show you how to write a shell script for Automator that will rename files using the date of the file or photo. MacMost is brought to you thanks to a great group of supporters. Go to MacMost.com/Patreon. There you can read more about it, join us, and get exclusive content. So what if you wanted to rename a file adding the date of the file before the existing file name? Or if these are photos, using the date that the photo was taken stored in the metadata for the file. You can do that using a shell script, and then the easiest way to access it is to put that shell script inside of Automator in a quick action. Then you can easily apply it to one or many files. So here I have a folder called pics. Here are the contents. And first thing is I want to use the date created. I don't see that here. I'm going to do view, show view options. And then I can see one of the options is to see date created. I'll turn that on. So now I can see the created date for all these files. I want to add these to the file name. So I can do that using a shell script. And what I'm going to do is put that in Automator so I can have it as a service so I can easily apply it. So first, here I am in Terminal and I'm in that same folder. If you're not in that folder, you can just do CD for change directory, drag the folder there, and then hit return, and now you're in that directory. Now to get the date created in the terminal, you can use this stat command. So I'll paste in here stat-f of file and then %b and then the name of the file. So this is the name of one of the files here. You can see the third one. When I hit return you can see I get the creation date. So good, right? Well, what's that number mean? It's the number of seconds since January 1st, 1970. I want to have a nice looking date, something I could read, so I can use the date command to format that. So we'll do this, date-r, and then we'll put in parentheses what we were doing before with a $sign there. So it's going to basically take the results of the stat command and then put it through date-r, which will return a nice looking date. There it is. So Tuesday, December 17th, and then the time and the time zone and the year. It's still not quite what we want to be as a file name. So we can format it. We can tell the date command to do a little more formatting and to get exactly what we want. So now I'm going to do the same command, but afterwards I'm going to put this at the end plus and then %Y for year, a dash, %m for the month, dash, %d for the day, lowercase there. And now we get a date that looks like that. That is what we want to put at the beginning of each file. So now we know how to get that. Now we need to write a shell script that will actually put that as the name of the file. So let's switch into Automator here. And what I've done in Automator is I've created a new quick action Automator document. I've set it to receive files or folders in the Finder. And then I've added one thing here. Just this run shell script. You can see it here. If you search for it you can drag it over. Now you end up with an area that you could write a shell script in. You can set the shell to what you want. By default it may be bash. I'm going to use Z shell, ZSH, because that's the default now in Catalina. This will probably work in either Z shell or bash. So in this I'm going to set the shell script to pass the input as arguments. It's very important to change that because otherwise the default is standard in. You want to do it as arguments. So then you have a for loop that can loop through the arguments, which are represented by $sign and the @ symbol there. So it's going to loop through everything passed into it, which will be files and folders. And it's going to loop, and then it's going to do exactly what we just did in the terminal. But it's going to set that to a variable. Variable's file date. So file date equals. It's important not to have spaces around the equals there. We're also going to get the path to the file and the file name itself. And you do that by doing file name is $F, and that's the F from here looping through all of the files that are passed in. And then you do :T, and then file path is :H. And then we're going to do a simple mv command, which is move a file. And you use the move command to also rename files, because all rename is moving a file from one place to another with a new name, right? So we'll do the file path / and then in curly brackets we'll put the two different names. The first one is the original name and the second one is the new name. So the original name in quotes here is simply going to be the file name, the original file name. The second one is also going to have the original file name there, but before it is going to be that file date, what we got from the date and stat there. and there's going to be a space between them. I have a space there. So it's going to just loop through all the files passed in and rename them. And this is called rename file with creation date. That's what I called it. So if I save that and then I go back here to this folder, I can select a file. I can control click on it and you could see quick actions. And under quick actions there's rename file with creation date. I select that and it runs the script and you can see what it does. It puts the date there, the creation date right here before the file. I could do that with multiple files by selecting multiple files. I'll just use shift click to do that. And I can control click on any one of them. They're all still selected. And I could say rename file with creation date. And now you can see it's got all of them renamed using the creation date for each file as the first part of the file name. So let's go back and say we don't want to use the creation date of the file. Why? Well, you often do this when you're dealing with photos. And what you really want is the date the photo was taken. But the creation date of the file may not match that. Stored in the metadata for JPEG images is the creation date for the file. We can actually look at that here. We can select one of these files. I can double click it and open it up in preview. And then I can do Command I to get information on the file. And you click on I here for metadata information and EXIF. That's the metadata that contains what we want. And we can see here that we've got the date and all sorts of other information for this file. So we know we've got that stored in the file itself. Now, can we get it in Terminal? And we can using something called MDLS. MD stands for metadata and then LS for listing. So we can get that here. Let's look at the data for that file by simply using MDLS and then the name of the file. And you're going to get all this information here. So we want to look carefully through all this to find the correct piece of metadata. So we find one here that's content creation date. So that's probably what we want. So we want to note that. And now we can do a command to just get that one line. We can use grep to do that. So this one line here will do the same thing we did before, MDLS and the file name. And then it's going to use this pipe here. That basically says pipe it into this new command. And this new command is going to be grep and it's going to say return the line with this piece of text on it. So we hit return and we actually get two lines. So what we really want is just the very first time it appears. So we'll modify the line with -M1, which will give us just the first occurrence. So good. So now we have the date here as part of the line. What we really like to do is just get that date by itself. You can use AWK to actually get that. And this is the third word. That's the first word, second word, third word of that. So we're going to pipe it again through AWK and then the command there in quotes is print out the third word. So we do that and you can see you get just the date portion. Perfect. That's what we want. So now we can use this in a very similar Automator quick action. So here's the new quick action. It actually looks very similar to the previous one. Does everything the same except here we have file date equals and then we have this shell script here. It's going to call MDLS for the file to get all that information. It's going to grep to get that one line here. And then it's going to use AWK to get the third part of that, which is the date. And it's going to set that to file date. Then it's going to get the file name and file path like our previous script. Rename the file just like before, except now instead of using the creation date for the file, it's going to use the photo date from the metadata for that file. So here we only wanted to receive image files, not files and folders, because this will only work with images. It needs this metadata in there. So I'll save this and this is going to be rename photo file with date. So now here in pictures I can select one, do control and click and then quick actions and then select rename file with date. And it will do what we want except now I get the actual date the photo was taken. In this case 2004. I can select all of these and control click on them, do the same thing, quick actions, and then rename photo file with date. And it will put the actual dates of each of those photos at the beginning of the file name for each one. So you can modify this in many ways. For instance, you can include more things in the date format like hours, minutes, and seconds. And you can customize the file names even further using these shell scripts as a starting point. I publish new tutorials every weekday. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out. Then hit the little bell icon to get notifications for each new tutorial.